Welcome back, everyone, to Middle of the Road, a podcast for runners and would-be runners with busy schedules and big appetites. My name is Christy Luke Jones. I'm one half of your hosting team. The other half of the team, he's always on time and he's always here. Unlike myself, it's UR1.
Hi, and actually, welcome back. Finally.
Thank you, mate. Well, finally, 2 weeks, mate. You're being a bit clingy. Yeah, I've been on holiday, and I've been ill. So, in case you're keeping count, which I hope you are, this is episode 6, otherwise known as week 5 of our 10-week training schedule. So we're at halfway point.
Yeah.
And what have we called this episode, you are?
We're calling, is it Hump or Dump?
Hump or Dump. So hump, because we're in the midpoint of the plan. So you've got to get over the hump. And it's all about getting over the hump or dumping the plan altogether, which we don't want to do. So there's going to be tips galore in this one. What kind of stuff are we talking about, you are, in general, about kind of things that might get us to dump a plan and things that might get us over the hump?
Yeah, so I think in general we're going to probably cover a couple of things like, because you're in the middle, so this is kind of where your training plan is probably at its peak, where you're doing the most amount of work, but then it's kind of like the bit where you kind of feel, are you motivated enough to do it? It's quite a lot. How are you going to fit it in? And then, you got little things like you were ill as well.
Yep.
How do you get back? If those things kind of get in the way, how can you kind of fight that?
Yeah, so if you've got burnout, if you're doing a bit too much, if you pick up an injury, or if you simply lose motivation, what can you do to get over that hump? Or even if you think you're not improving, if you're going for a time and you think you've hit a plateau and you're not getting any better, how do you motivate yourself to keep going?
And it's a very fine balance between the two, because you can also be the complete on the other end of the scale. You could easily overtrain.
Yeah, and again, that can lead to burnout if you're doing too much.
And it just becomes a cycle. You just go, why am I not getting better? Oh, maybe I should do more, and then you kind of like keep on cycling, and then
there's so many pieces of the jigsaw that need to come together for you to keep being able to run and keep up what you're doing. That if one piece goes out of place, it can lead to you being going off the rails. My voice is a lot more manly than it normally is. I think as a result of my illness. So bear with me and it will be back to its falsetto best next week. So when I was away, you have 2 weeks, other than crying into your pillow, what kind of exercise did you do?
What kind of exercise did I do?
Yes.
So play badminton.
Nice.
Play badminton at work. Mm-hmm. So kind of mix that up.
Mm-hmm.
I put a post up recently because I decided to check my Fitbit activity just out of curiosity. So
I definitely saw that post.
Yes.
But tell me anyway.
So basically I played badminton on Friday and then the park run the next day, which is the 5k park run, and I roughly did the same amount of steps in each. So okay, fair enough. Badminton was a longer session.
Yeah.
But I was quite surprised. I thought I would have done a lot more in the running. But
yeah, that's pretty impressive, because badminton, obviously, like most sports, it's quite stop-start. So the fact that you covered that, how long did you play for?
So I played for about just over an hour.
Okay, that's pretty good going. So you must have been hammering it.
Well,
no, I mean, considering when UR plays badminton, he likes to go for a domination technique. So he likes to make the other person run around like an idiot. I'm often that idiot. And he likes to stand still and just like a metronome, just hit the shuttlecock left and right or back and forward. So it's quite a shock for me to hear that UR has actually been running at badminton. Presumably the people you're playing against are good.
Yeah, the standards decent. There's one guy who's really good, but he was like a former like German youth champion.
Wow.
So he played in the German leagues.
And the Germans don't mess around when it comes to being good at sport. So
no, he covers the court fairly well. So.
Yeah, nice. Any running? Apart from the park run.
Yeah, apart from the park run. So actually, it's kind of like 2 weeks worth, isn't it? So done park run the week before,
How were your
actually,
times?
I haven't really done much running in general.
Okay. How were your times at parkrun then?
About 23 and a half. So probably about the same.
Yeah.
Probably if you look at my graph, it just looks like a cyclical graph, like up and down,
Yeah.
like the economy.
There we go. I know nothing about the economy, so I can only chuckle at that and not really know.
But what about you? I mean, come on, you've been away for
Yeah, so I had a week.
fairly long time.
Yes, I had a week in, just over a week in Israel. It was a fairly hectic schedule of kind of doing sightseeing and stuff all day, and then going out at night. So there was never really time to kind of schedule in a run per se, which I would do maybe on a, as we've discussed in a previous episode, I would maybe go on a run in the morning on a more relaxing holiday.
Fair enough.
But as this was a new place for me, I was really hammering it, like trying to see as much as I could.
What do you mean, like running to the bar?
Yeah, there was some bars involved. But the thing was, we did do a lot of walking though, because the weather was so great. I found myself doing a lot of walking, like rather than getting on the bus or on a train, whatever. We were walking a lot. So some days I was covering like 20 odd kilometers. So in real money, 12 or so miles. So I think that's pretty good for a day.
But I guess also isn't Sunday like the time, or is it Saturday the time where like everything just shuts down?
Yeah. So when they have the Sabbath, lots of stuff shuts down. As of the Friday kind of early evening.
It's like sundown.
Yeah. Sundown on the Friday, so you can't really take public transport in most places. So yeah, there was a lot of walking involved, which is good. And I thought to myself, it was kind of a double-edged sword because mentally I could feel myself needing a run for that endorphin hit of doing an intense load of exercise, which I didn't get as much from the walking. But I didn't feel like my fitness dropped too much because the walking, I could feel the effect of it. But for me, I only get that endorphin rush when I do something like high intensity workout, so running.
Right.
So, I didn't feel like my fitness struggled too much, but I wasn't getting the same endorphin buzz. But obviously I was on holiday, so I didn't really need it too much. But yeah, then I got back and the long nights and long days caught up with me and I was a dead man for a week.
Yep.
I tried to run. It was a bad idea. It made it worse.
Well, running man to a running nose.
Exactly. So I had to. So basically, I let the gods of fate dictate what I was doing, and just stayed in bed for a week, pretty much.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads us nicely into our main discussion, hump or dump, because it felt like I hit a hump of I've been on holiday for a week, and now I'm ill. I've been ill for a whole week. That's 2 weeks out from actually running. Am I going to be able to pick this back up, or is this going to be a prolonged period of inactivity for me?
Yeah, and actually it kind of nicely falls because it was only recently we talked about. I know we talked about interruptions, but this is quite literally an interruption, but almost in line with how do you almost like get back on the horse in terms of your training plan as well, especially when you're at. Like, how do you feel when you're at a point where, you're at the peak part of the training plan, but then you get completely cut with your illness?
Yeah.
And then it's just like, how do you get back on?
I think I actually went to because I'm building myself up to a marathon next April. We're currently in early November, so late April next year, 2019, I'll be doing the London Marathon, which I've mentioned before is my first full marathon. So I went to a marathon training day yesterday, where they gave you various kind of approaches to marathon running and they looked at your running style and all sorts of great stuff. And one of the things they talked about was having a training plan and being ready to burn that training plan at a minute's notice.
What do they mean by burn?
So
what
they mean is like you could have the best laid training plan, the most detailed, well-balanced training program that you've worked on for months and months and months, and then you might twist your ankle or you might get flu for 2 weeks. You've got to be ready to adapt and you can't let it knock you back. And I think they were talking a lot about psychologically it's going to be a big hit, but you have to roll with the punches and just change your plan. You can only do what you can do.
How do you feel when you heard that advice? Like, because I guess talking from my experience, when because I remember we were discussing about this just before we started recording as well, and kind of thinking to myself, all the ones that I've done before, I didn't really have a plan in the first place.
Yeah.
It's like the reality. Sometimes the reality is sometimes you just go with the flow.
Yeah, I think we're not very good examples of that because we don't tend to plan.
Yeah.
But for those who do, and I hear it's quite common for people to actually have a plan for things, which is great. But the main thing that she said was, and she opened up the presentation with this, and she also closed it with this, was your main priority is getting to the start line of your race, whether that be a marathon or a half marathon or 10K, whatever, fit and healthy. Yeah. That is, she said, that's 95% of the challenge is to get there fit and healthy on the start line. Mm-hmm. And then 5% is getting around on the day. Yeah. And if you're fit and healthy on the start line, you've pretty much covered it.
Yeah.
And for me, that says, with injuries and illnesses, if you're pushing through and running anyway with an illness or an injury, you're not going to get on the start line fit and healthy. And if you do, you're going to be very lucky.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess that's what I'm trying to say is you've got to be willing to rip up that plan at least for a couple of weeks if you want to, in the big picture, actually get to your race without being burnt out.
But I guess have we ever done, like, I could probably think of maybe one or two where I've done where I haven't felt the greatest on the start line?
I mean, the one for me that I can think of is the only one that I've ever done that I didn't actually finish a half marathon.
Yeah.
It would have been, 2 years ago?
Is that the Henley one?
The Henley one. Because I'd done a 100k walk a few weeks before, hadn't properly let myself recover, hadn't really thought about, when I booked the half marathon, hadn't really thought about how potentially wrecked my feet would be and my ankles, and arrogantly did the half marathon, got to 12 miles, my ankle just went.
Yeah.
And I felt I was gutted, and it knocked my confidence for about 6 months to 10 months. And really what I should have done was thought to myself, okay, I'm doing a 100k walk. Maybe I shouldn't book that marathon in. Maybe I should wait and book it last minute if I'm feeling good. Because I wrecked it. I wrecked it for myself, and that really knocked my confidence. And what I should have done is given myself time to recover and been realistic about what my body needed.
Yeah, and probably not ask others, shall I enter the half? Because I think you asked me, and then I kind of tried to persuade you a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're
just
not...
like disregarded your feet. I was just like, yeah, no, just do it. Yeah.
I forget that you are I am 100% organic material, where you are is at least 70% reinforced galvanized steel, and his body just doesn't seem to suffer the same rigorous damage as mine does. But that's the one I can think of where I've done it. What about you? Because you always seem, to me anyway, like, regardless of what you've done prior or what you haven't done prior, you turn up on the day and you perform.
I wouldn't necessarily say like perform per se.
But you don't moan.
Yeah, but it's kind of like when you're at the start line. I mean, moaning's not. My thinking is when you're at the start line, moaning's not really gonna help.
Yeah.
I just kind of like want to get on and get over and done with. But there's been once or twice, I come slightly ill. Like I feel a little bit, whether you want to say undercooked.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You just kind of. I sometimes feel in those occasions, it depends how mentally you can get yourself around it. Sometimes you can. You just feel like, even though you'll say, like, one of the times I had a bit of a cold, felt a bit wheezy, but I kind of just thought I was so close to the end. I just thought I'll just do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it didn't help.
But did you enjoy it, or was it awful?
It was awful, but I didn't really as we're like talking about with today's talk, I didn't really prepare myself that well. I remember like halfway through like training, I think I felt slightly ill, and I just carried that illness all the way through.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes I always equate it to similar, like when you're working, and sometimes when you work and you're just never ill, and then when you go on holiday, suddenly you're just ill.
Yeah, because you finally kind of allowed yourself that opportunity to be almost.
Yeah, and I just feel that sometimes when running and training, it's the same thing, because when you're on the day, you almost get a little bit of a buzz, you relax a little bit because it's about to happen, like either the week before, because your training's lighter, and then suddenly it just hits you.
Yeah, I think though that like the way you were discussing it then, when you kind of, there was no bones about it. You said it was awful, you know, on the day. The experience was awful. You were really up against it, and you had to run through all this crap, basically. Something that the sports scientist that led the training day yesterday said to me was, because I was talking to her about stupid stuff that I'd done, basically, like running with a broken rib, running when I know my back's wrecked, running when I know my feet are wrecked, all sorts of crap that I shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
She said to me, like, okay, you've proven you can do that, and you're stubborn, and mentally you're stubborn, and you can drag yourself through stuff, but is it enjoyable? She said, are you getting the most possible enjoyment out of this? And when she put it to me like that, it really hit home, and I thought to myself, well, probably not. I'm getting enjoyment out of it, but I could get a hell of a lot more. You know, I'm paying for these runs most of the time. I should be able to enjoy not only the training and the benefits that training will give me generally. You know, I'm not just trying to get good at running.
Yeah.
You want to get healthy. You want to improve your sleep. You want to do all these things, all these benefits that running should give. Whereas so far, really, I've been knowing that I can get through a race. I've not been training. I've been eating awful stuff like Magnums and chicken and whole tubs of ice cream. You know, could I enjoy it more? And that was something that struck me to talk about today is, should I, you know, I probably should. Wow. This isn't a good realization. It feels like wow, okay. Yeah. But do you know what I mean?
Just like a confession kind of thing.
This is an epiphany.
You're just like realizing all this is falling down.
Everyone listening is like, wow, this is the guy that was telling us things for 5 episodes, and we were like, oh yeah, this guy must know what he's talking about, and now he's saying this. But yeah,
but I guess that's the difference. Sometimes for, I don't know, I always find for me and you, we're probably a little bit more relaxed in like we kind of not necessarily go through the motions, but we kind of be more spontaneous with what we do with training and how we don't necessarily have set training plans. Even if we do, we're just like, I'll just sometimes do it the next day, or we try and mix it up differently. Yeah. But yeah, I think sometimes when you're not in that rhythm, it's hard to kind of like focus down and get yourself into that. I
think for us, we're so used to just knuckling down and pulling ourselves through the pain that we kind of, that's how we do things. But I guess for the sake of the podcast, we need to look at the hump or dump thing from the perspective of someone that's doing a race for the first time, really. Because if they're doing a race for the first time and this is the program that they're following, they're going to get to the halfway point, and we need to kind of think about what our listeners are going to be feeling at this point.
Yeah.
Rather than us, we don't give two shits about plans half the time. Let's put ourselves in.
Yeah, but some people might be in the same situation as us. Okay. Like they would, because we're exactly the same. We would look at, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll look at training plans online. I'll go, oh, these are really good. These are really awesome. And you realize at the halfway point where you're meant to be at the most maximum point, and then you realize I haven't done any of this. Yeah. Because, either work got in the way, a little bit lazy. I didn't really eat the salad and the duck and chicken lean meat, so I decided to go for a Big Mac and ate, as you say, eat a couple of Magnums. So I guess
4.
It's just
4 Magnums. Sorry, carry on.
You just want to emphasize it's not a couple, it's more. But you just want, I guess it's just for us just to almost like our experience just put into perspective and how we sometimes overcome it, because in the end we're trying to, if someone's doing it for the first time and realize, oh, actually I'm doing exactly the same, I have this training plan but I'm not really getting into it, but at least we're trying to instill that to give them confidence in terms of that, you can do it. You just there are little things that we do well out of
Yeah,
all the things that we
little
don't
things.
do. But
The-
yeah, we just gotta I don't know. I feel like by providing that, you'll be able to guide them to get to that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely it's definitely useful to hear our perspective from a casual perspective of a very flexible training plan.
Yeah,
But I think it'd be useful maybe if we put ourselves in the shoes of different kinds of people.
yeah,
So the scenario I was thinking of is someone's first time training for an event, right? They've run before a little bit, but this is the first time they're going for, say, a half marathon, right? So they're halfway through this training program. They've done 5 weeks out of 10. They've stuck to their plan.
mm-hmm.
They're building up to longer and longer runs, but they've got to 5 weeks and they are bored with running.
Yeah,
They've been running. This is the only exercise they've been doing, and they're bored, and they're finding it harder and harder to get out and run.
okay.
What would you, as a running doctor, obviously not a real doctor, but in this context, a running podcast doctor, what would you prescribe?
Just to clarify, I'm not a professional doctor or qualified. I think that's.
I am. He's not. No, I'm not either. But what would you? What? So this person who's stuck to their plan, running 5 weeks, and they're bored of running.
I think
But
for me, you might feel the same. It's just with some of the things that, like when I was talking about earlier, I put in badminton. You know, if there are other sports, so say like there's a couple of things that say firstly, if there are a couple of sports that you enjoy, I think try and go out and do them. I think that's a good way to, you know, get some exercise in as well and mix it up a little bit and not just, you know, do training runs constantly. Unless you're doing a sport that involves no running at all.
Yeah. So then we get onto the definition of sport.
Yeah.
But I think if you get to that point and you are bored, then you've got the two options of hump or dump. And I think if you keep doing just running, you're going to dump it. You're going to dump your plan. I think to get over the hump, if, like you say, if you put in some variety and you play some other sports or you do some walking or something active, it may be a little bit of a departure from your ideal plan. But if 2 weeks or 3 weeks of that keeps you fit, maintains your fitness, and also maintains your interest, what's better, having a slightly adapted plan with a bit more variety or quitting altogether?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's that lesser of two evils, isn't it?
So I think some classic ones is, firstly, you can replace it with sport.
Mm-hmm.
Other ones is, as they, you know, sometimes they call it, it depends. If you go in the gym or not, or just like outside a gym, then cross training is another prime example. So what that is like, rather than running, you can do cycling, rowing or swimming, and you can do that in the gym or outdoors as well. And
you can do in the gym as well. I mean, a lot of people don't recommend doing massive weights if you're going towards a running goal, but certainly some strength and conditioning with things like press ups, sit ups, general core strength can be beneficial.
I think planks is the classic one.
Yeah.
I think especially when you're going for half marathons, I would say I for me personally, like 5K and 10Ks, I don't get as much issues in terms of the core area. So half marathons, I tend to sometimes feel my back goes, but generally like core, like planks and stuff, that helps me a lot in that sense. I don't know if you have the same thing, but
I think 5 and 10K, it doesn't get to a point where my body, the kind of problem points in my body don't start aching yet. It's only when it gets to the half point that I start feeling it.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of people will probably, who have run halves, will say.
Yeah, and I think the final thing sometimes, if you're running by yourself, that's probably the hardest point. I think.
Good point.
You know, finding, if you do have a friend or a training partner, I think sometimes that is good.
100%. It keeps you motivated, and also a lot of kind of running theory says that a lot of people worry that if they run with a partner, or, you know, be it friend or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, that they'll slow down and their pace will be pedestrian won't be good enough.
Yeah.
But a lot of running theory, this is what I learned yesterday as well. I'm giving you all the scoop from yesterday. All these things that I should have learned in my 31 years on this earth. That when you're running, at least for a long run, a long training run, you should be at a pace and a level of exertion when you're able to talk.
Yes.
If you're not able to talk because you're killing yourself that much, you're doing too much.
Mm-hmm.
So get someone along on a Sunday, do a nice run outdoors, go through the countryside, along the river, wherever you live, enjoy it, and give yourself that different perspective. Because running can be it's a really good point, running with people, because it can be quite isolating, can't it?
Yeah, it definitely can. I think it depends on preferences, but I guess when you're doing so many training runs, especially when you're in the middle, you're pretty much doing one. Like some training plans are up to 6 days, aren't they?
Yeah.
You do one every single day, and it can get quite a lot. But I do find there are small little adjustments that you can make to make your life easier. I know others which it's something that I don't do myself because I'm quite a person that enjoys the scenery, but I know sometimes people would put their headphones in and listen to something, listen to music, listen to audiobooks or podcasts.
Exactly. This one. But yeah, it's a difficult one, but I think if your scenario is similar to this and you're bored, you simply can't get yourself out because you just can't take any more running. I think you guys come up with the big ones here, like add some variety to your training plan, get a partner along to run with, make it a bit more sociable, or if you get someone along with you, go out for a smoothie afterwards, go out for a juice afterwards, make it a social activity rather than just, oh my god, I've got to tick this off my training plan. Turn it into a social thing.
Yeah, put a couple of pub stops along the way.
Maybe not pub stops.
Cafes.
A juice afterwards is good. I mean, we've done that before, right? I'm pretty sure after a park run we've gone for a juice or something. I'm pretty sure we have.
If you're referring to sprinkles, then yes, we have.
Or ice cream. Yes, you've earned it. If it's a big one, you've earned it. Okay, so that's one scenario that I thought we would assess. Another one that I also thought of is, which again is a common one. You've been doing the 5 weeks of the training plan so far, and you felt really good with the running, and you felt, oh wow, I'm feeling a lot better. I'm getting quicker. I'm able to run further. So I'm going to keep running more and more and more. And you're doing really regular runs. You're doing bigger runs, and you get burnout. So you're knackered all the time. When you're at work, you're knackered. After the day after a run, you're completely tired at work. You can't concentrate. You're possibly getting colds more regularly. You're just feeling run down. What would your suggestion be for that person who's maybe their enthusiasm is great, but they've possibly hit it a little bit too hard and they're thinking, oh my god, I'm 5 weeks in, there's no way I'm getting to 10.
Rest. So it sounds really easy and simple, and just to say, you should take a break, rest, give it a couple of days. It sounds really easy and obvious, isn't it? But you probably know, and sometimes when you're always, even if you're doing sports that you really enjoy, not just running, or if you enjoy all the runs, sometimes telling yourself to stop and just like rest is one of the hardest things to do. 100%. To be able to judge, because sometimes you get caught in that cycle of like, okay, today I was a minute slower than I was. I need to push myself harder next time. You push yourself and you're like, I'm still a minute off, and you're just constantly driving yourself nuts about why you're not quite there, and then it starts declining, and it hits you over time. So it's not just like one day and suddenly you overtrain.
Yeah, it's like a negative spiral, isn't it? I think the nature of running in this way is that really the bad thing is, the risky thing is, if you're feeling disappointed with your performance, you've only got yourself. You can only blame yourself. As if you're playing a team sport, you might lose a football match and you say, we lost. 11 of us are to blame. If that's the attitude you're taking. When you're running, it's quite you can be really hard on yourself because you're the only person that you can possibly blame.
Yeah.
And like you are says, if you get a minute slower and you're one of these people that's very competitive with yourself, you're going to be harder and harder on yourself, and you're possibly going to burn yourself out.
Yeah.
So there's the obvious thing of rest. There are other things as well. If you're getting more colds and you're getting generally feeling run down, you can look at your nutrition a bit, can't you? In some ways. So obviously, some people take probiotics. Some people when they start running seriously, they start taking more vitamins to keep their immune system up. I know you can get that Vicks first defense spray.
Oh, the one that you spray up your nose.
Up your nose. So as soon as you start feeling a cold or a cough, it kind of prevents it. I don't know how it works. Science.
Yeah.
And also, you know, there's lots of factors to look at. You've got to listen to your body. Are you getting enough sleep?
Mm-hmm.
It might be something other than you're just training too much. You might not be getting enough sleep. You might be training hard and then partying hard.
Yeah.
It's that jigsaw again. Which pieces aren't fitting?
Yeah,
I guess.
And it is quite hard to judge when to stop. But I don't know. For me, it's always like if after a couple of days where the performance isn't quite there, for me, I tend to say, okay, let's give myself a couple of days rest.
Yeah.
That's how I normally
do
it from my own personal experience.
Something that I've done, I often find when I've experienced burnout in the past, it's either, like I said, I'm not getting enough sleep, so I'm trying to do a big run on not enough sleep, and obviously that varies from person to person. You need to know your own body in that sense. Another one is I'm not fueling myself before and after the run.
Yeah.
So I'm eating my lunch at work, then 6 hours later I'm going on a run without any food in my belly in that time, and that's dumb. You know, you need something in your system, otherwise you're going to just use all the blood sugar in your body and you're going to feel like absolute shit afterwards.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we might do an episode on that at some point.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that we can discuss later on. Nutrition.
Yeah, I think nutrition is a big one because we're both crap at it. Me
just
probably more than you.
Just the way we eat, and also, you know, eating on the day. That's quite a big thing.
Oh, what?
That we can discuss it in
race day
one.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe one more quick scenario I would say is something we've kind of discussed before. Someone has got to this 5-week point again, and the runs are going well. They're fitting in all their runs. They're sticking to their plan, but their main concern is, and the reason why they're thinking about quitting, is that they're not improving time-wise. So they're someone who's very much driven towards getting a particular time for, say, a half marathon, and they feel like they've plateaued performance-wise. Their biggest concern is that their performance isn't getting better. What would you say to that person to keep them motivated or to keep their confidence up? I'm putting you on the spot here, man. You're doing pretty well.
I think in terms of that, you just have to keep on going. You have to realise that over 10 weeks, you have to realistically look at the targets that you set. So take, like for me, for example, if I was to do a half marathon, my average is probably 1 hour 45. If I put myself in 10 weeks to go to 1 hour 30, that's impossible.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm looking, 10% off is a really good time for me. You have to put yourself into that kind of shoes. Are you setting yourself a really ambitious target? So when you're at the halfway point, you go, oh, I'm nowhere near. But if you already cut off like 10-20% off your time, you're kind of like you're miles ahead. Yeah.
And I think particularly if we're putting ourselves in the shoes of probably quite a few of our listeners that it's their first race, you're not really in the position to set yourself a time goal, are you, really? You know, when you think about it, realistically, you're not going to have to predict what time you're going to get. You've never run that distance before. I think it's quite arrogant, and I did it when I first ran. I was like, I'm going to get this time.
Yeah.
I think you can generally say maybe hopefully get under 2 hours. You can't be like, right, I'm going to get 135 or less.
Yeah.
How do you know? You've never put your body through that distance before.
No. It is quite difficult. And I think you just have to realise where you start from. I think that's the big thing, because if you start losing sight of that, then I think you can easily say, oh, I'm not getting any quicker.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you'd be like, oh, I'm running, say you're doing 5Ks as your base, and like every time to check yourself every week, and it's roughly the same time. But then that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not improving, because potentially your training could be training your longer distance running, and you're still running the same speed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's things like that, like maintenance and consistency is an achievement. You know, for you to be consistently running at the same pace is an achievement, because it means that you're disciplined and that you know how to pace yourself, and that you know that's something that takes time. And I think the main thing, again, like we said at the start of the show, if you're not getting to the start line, you're not getting your time. You're not going to get anything. Mm-hmm. You know, you got to get there, and if you're not kind on yourself and you're not positive and encouraging to yourself, why bother? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But it's difficult, isn't it? Because what's the first thing someone says to you when you say, oh, I ran a half marathon this weekend?
Cool.
Wait a second. Not what I was going for. So you've just run a half marathon, right? And you say to me, hey, Christy, I ran the half marathon this weekend. What's the first thing I'm going to ask you?
What's your time?
What's your time? I actually had to make a tapping motion on my wrist there. I thought you always going to pick up on that. Yeah, the first thing cool, God's sake. The first thing someone asks you, the most casual friend. The first thing someone asks you is, what was your time? Even if they're not a runner, it's just a knee-jerk question. What was your time? Yeah,
and sometimes even I find it always surprising now that you mention that, is when someone who's sometimes people have never done a half marathon before and go, oh, what's your time? And you go, yeah, I did it in 1 hour 50. Oh, that's really good. And you're like, and sometimes you think in your head, how do you really know if that's really good?
That might be great for them. Like, they might have run 2 hour 20 every time they've done it. And for them, that's
I'm talking about, like, imagine, like, you speak to someone that's never run before.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
and then they ask you that question, and then they go, oh, yeah, that's really good. He goes, oh, you're not quite under 2 hours. And you're kind of thinking, I was in a lot of pain running that.
Yeah.
And you kind of...
And I think it's like when you see someone, I think it's like it's small talk, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's small talk that builds this attitude of you do a run because you want to get a time.
Yeah.
So it's a tough one. It's a tough one to tell yourself that time isn't everything. But I think I would, you know, you've said, you're quite right. You would tell that person to stay motivated and to really look at every small achievement they've made and not worry too much about the short game. Yeah. Do you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Sweet.
Definitely.
I think that probably wraps it up for this week. So we've looked at some scenarios that you may be facing yourself at the hump part, and we've kind of discussed. Dr. UR and myself have kind of said, how are you going to get over that hump rather than dumping your plan altogether? I hope it's been helpful. If you've got another scenario that you're facing that we've not addressed, feel free to message via our socials or to comment on the podcast itself, and we can get around to having a look and address maybe some tips.
Yeah.
But have we got any concrete plans for next week, do you think?
I think
moving into the second half of the program.
Maybe next week we'll actually pick up on the topic we discussed not too long ago about like nutrition. What do we eat during a training plan?
That should be fun.
we highlighted it a couple of times throughout the couple of weeks. And actually, what should you have on the day?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Because sometimes, like, I know during the day, when you have some sort of nutrition, sometimes people say you need to have it beforehand to prepare your stomach for it.
Yeah, a lot of people ask that, don't they? Like, what should I eat on the day?
Yeah.
There's so much to talk about on that. Yeah, let's do nutrition. Yeah. Let's do nutrition. And let's be honest about what we eat. It's gonna hurt, but let's be honest about what we eat.
So what we're going to do is next week we're going to talk about nutrition, and me and Christy, I'm going to set this now. We'll write out what we've eaten and we'll compare the notes.
Okay, that sounds horrifying, but let's go for it. That's it for another week of Middle of the Road, our running podcast. I'll leave you with this little dialogue between myself and you. I hope you are on board with this. Hey, you are. I've just run a half marathon.
I was going to say cool again.
No. Hey, you are. I've just run a half marathon.
What's your time?
I had a good time. Enjoyment is key. See you next week.
Yes. Yeah. Doctor.